My name is Charmaine. I'm one of the curators for this exhibition, and welcome tonight to a in-gallery conversation with two of the artists who are in the Living Pictures exhibition. So we have with us this evening Pramuan Burusphat and Jamir from the Philippines and Pramuans from Thailand, and we are seated coincidentally. Their works are very close to each other. So over there is Nap's work, and behind me is Pramuan's work, just so that all of you have some context. So let me start. Let me start by introducing Pramuan. He's one of Thailand's earliest conceptual photographers, known for his bold experimentations with different camera and printing technologies. After receiving his Bachelor of Fine Arts in 1976 from North Texas State University, he taught photography there for 2 years before moving to teach at Bangkok's Srinagarindvirot University in 1980 and Chulalongkorn University in 1982. At the latter institution, he became a founding member of the Faculty of Fine and Applied Arts, during which he started the first photography as art program in Thailand. As an educator, he has had a considerable influence on Thai photography, teaching other well-known artists such as Manit, who's in the audience here, and exposing them to conceptual practices. Pramuan saw photography as a way to engage with a wide-ranging community of artists. He participated in the Folk Thai Time exhibition in 1986 at the Birasri Institute of Modern Art, which was one of the earliest artist-curated exhibitions of a conceptual nature in Thailand. So I'll start with Praman. I thought maybe what we could do is just briefly talk about autobiographical series behind me, which was one of your earliest works. So maybe you can just introduce the work and tell us why you made it and where your starting point was.
No, I start doing this, out of interest and looking back, I have some more like mentor or photographer and artist that I look up to, like Lucas Mara, Wayne Michaels, and I had to do my thesis work. And after searching around and around, I end up coming back to myself, what to do, and it has conflict of thought. And the series that I did was, autobiographical image. And I end up selecting, I went through the process of trying to pick up the process that would work best with my thought or my theme. But somehow after trying the photo silk screen and some other process, I just, couldn't handle it. It's just too, too smelly and it's bad for my health. But somehow I was lucky enough to find the process for this series of images. It's called quick print, which back then was dated already. Nobody used it anymore because it was a pre-press proofing for full-color printing in the US. And most of the images that I use is just from my own recollection of my childhood as well as my experience growing up and as well as being there in Texas at that time. So I combine all the images and to compare with now, it's more or less like putting layers of thought into one single print, just like Photoshop. But it's a bit harder because one by one we have to put it by hand and finish it somehow to get the final result. And the first one is called, that's on the screen, and it's there. The real size is small. In this series, it's 8 by 10 and 11 by 14 inches, and they are all monoprint, just one of a kind that you got it on the wall. Looking at this one, the series that I made, somehow I've what do you call it? Refer to the text that was looking at photograph is a cover of a book by John Sikowski, which was one of the leading photographer, curator, and art educator. And the book itself just one of the book that, I respect it as my primary teacher because I looked through it and I refer it and use it in my work in the background. And the other work is that's a drive-in in the back and myself in the front to the left side. It refers to myself as well as actually on that wall, it's a drive-in, it's a Star Wars movie. Okay, so it's refer to the time that was happening, and myself at the time. And that one also have the image that superimposed one after the other in a more painterly fashion. And on the left side corner, I think it was written destination unknown. That's one of the part that I took. And the destination is still unclear now, but it's getting there. Okay. That's one of to the end of the series. It's a self-portrait reflecting oneself with printing through Japanese rice paper in the process of the film, just to refer to being from the East, making work out in the West in North Texas. And I'm now refer to looking at photograph to see the process that I went through to get the real work at the end there. Starting from the top left side, printing from black, and then have the same negative, printing the other color. I'm not so sure what it is, but probably cyan. And then to the pink one, just primary color. About 5 printing process and end up using the final images, just using hand coloring to the green to complete the product or the picture itself.
I guess let me jump in at this point. So if anyone pays attention to the labels of the work, the medium says quick print, and even myself as a photography curator, when I acquired this work for the gallery, no one knew what quick print was, and I actually asked colleagues in other museums, and still no one knew what a quick print was. So I had to ask Pramuan to explain it to me at that point as well. And he was trying to explain it was a contact print. It survived only for a few years in the US. But I've never seen this, so I kind of finally understand it a bit better now and how he made the process. But I thought before you move on to the next slide, you were talking about combining all these different icons, right? What were you thinking about when you put them together? Is it formal or ideas?
It's not formal, it's just bits and pieces of my life and also bits and pieces of my collection or
Of images?
images as
Okay.
well of objects.
Right.
Combine them together to create those, whatever that I try to convey.
Okay, so I thought it was very interesting. So when I was in the national collection in Singapore, we have more than just this from Pramuan, and quite a lot of your works deal with autobiographical imagery and autobiographical topic, not just this one. So I think on the next slide we have Figure in Chrome, is it? Oh no, it's still autobiographical.
That's the last one of the series.
So what was this one? Do you want to talk a bit about this one?
It's self-portrait as an artist and also symbol of being a young artist trying to survive the world. That's why I put fork and spoon in there. You have to make a living. It's a conflict that,
So that one was what, hand colored and with the quick print
It's
also?
a quick print, and then at the end, most of them I either drew on it or hand coloring using photo oil.
Okay.
And talking about the self-image, I also did a lot of experimenting with the concept photo. And one of them was just photo reconstruction series, which I did about 10 images. It's a bit bigger size, using about 216 by 20 photo paper and combining together, as well as putting photo oil onto them to make the departing from the original whatever photo that I took. Also, one of the earlier photo abstract, which, actually just a golf course, chair and shadows and light. But that's what, after I took it, the meaning shift and become something else after you put them together. But actually, this one is just part of the series, because the actual series is a bit more complex than that. But sorry, maybe I had the photo at the end somehow. I'm not so sure. And that's another one of the same series. They are all, that's 316 by 20 print. Some were hand colors, and it's just an image from construction site where now it became part of the town that's grown so quick, changing everything. I think that's referred to the work, just one part of the work that you had in the collection. Yeah.
Yeah, we showed this 2 years ago in one of the exhibitions here.
That's the
Suddenly
folk
Turning
Thai time. That's a more conceptual art that has some written words on the paper. It's a conversation about what's going on with myself, with the dolls in there. It's a bit of a long story, but just to show one of the things that I did. And that's going to be the last sample that I put it on show here. That's actually quite new. Maybe I did it in 2015. I had it shown at Kathmandu Gallery earlier in 2016, and then later at my own show at the Bangkok Art
and Culture Center.
Yeah, Gallery in 2017 is about 1.5 meter long or something. But actually that's a process of, it's my own negative color that's shift and change unintentionally. Somehow it's just put it there, process it in the modern terms of digital processing to see the change of time, and also the process of going from the analog way to the new digital world.
So actually, one of the things that I wanted to ask Pramuan was that a lot of, all the works you've shown us, plus the works on the wall, a lot of it is driven by autobiography.
Yeah.
And I wonder if was that a response to the kind of art being made in Thailand in the 70s and the 80s, which a lot of it was talking about nationalism. But you chose to actually not touch on that at all, and a lot of it was self-referential.
Yeah.
Was it a reaction, or not related?
Not really, because actually I was just doing my own thing, but I had tied to a certain point to a group of people who were reactionary to the so-called nationalist trend. Yeah, like Ajahn Damrong, Ajahn Iti, and we had a loose group of people that exhibit together here in Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia.
Okay. And I guess the other question I had was, so when you went back to Bangkok, what was the photography scene like at that point? Because you were teaching in the universities and you were trying to set up, I guess, new photo courses,
Yeah.
right? So what was happening actually at that point? you remember?
Well, it's quite a lot going on, but I'm in one part. It's not quite that. Not there were some people were quite active, but I didn't. Not my type.
Not different groups of artists practicing in Bangkok. Do you?
Not too many artists
Okay.
practicing. Yeah, but there's quite a few people. But some was like Ajay try to educate the other parties, but didn't work.
Okay. So what about what were you trying to do with
No, I was just
your courses in the
I
university?
just try to introduce to them that you can use photography to create art, and it doesn't have to be drawing or painting or printmaking or sculpture. You can express yourself, your thought to the, two-dimensional work without having to. It's valid as anything else. That's what I was trying to do.
But was there resistance at the start? This was what, 80s, right?
Probably so, because in the national art competition, I was one who is now quite well-known artist. He was doing photographic work, but his teachers at the university didn't appreciate it at all. I think it's calming.
So when do you think it changed in Thailand? Like when was this shift from the acceptance of photography as
Took a while.
fine art?
Took a while.
It took a while.
Yeah, it's probably in the 90s,
Okay.
right before I left.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Pramuan.
You probably have to ask Manny.
Yeah, maybe we'll ask him later in the Q&A. Okay, thank you. So, I mean, I'm actually going to move the time over to Nap now, but if there's any questions from the audience, we can come back and discuss this with Praman and maybe Manit as well. But let me introduce our next speaker and artist, Nap Hamir. So he is a photographer, cinematographer, and director of advertising and feature films. Nap participated in his first group exhibition at the Sanctuary Gallery run by artist Alan Riviera in 1973, and soon became part of Shop 6, a loose group of artists led by Roberto Chabet, who are known for their conceptual and progressive works. Nap has also held 2 solo exhibitions at the Cultural Center of the Philippines, which is the CCP, in 1976 and 79, and participated in several group exhibitions at the same venue, including 13 artists, Otherwise Photography, Pictures, 9 Photographers, and the CCP Annual. And those of us who study Philippines art history will recognize the significance of some of these exhibitions. Nap was also part of the ASEAN Mobile Exhibition of Art and Photography in 1981 and the Valparaiso Biennale. In the 1980s, he shifted to commercial photography and co-founded the Shadow Visual Design Group with photographer Neal Oshima. He has also worked as a cinematographer and a director for film and television since 1985. And he currently teaches at UP, University of Philippines College of Fine Arts, the UP Film Institute, and the Asia Pacific Film Institute. So I'm going to let Nat control the slides and talk about some of his work to start.
Thank you, Charmaine, for that really super overbloated introduction. Uh, but I tried my best to do as much as like you said. One thing that struck me, I mean, there's a lot of parallels between me and Pramuan, and uh, a writer took note of that some time ago and said that we were running actually like in parallel worlds. While he was working on all the stuff that he's been doing, I was also working uh, at the same time. And if you see my work, uh, it's also autobiographical, but it is autobiographical by necessity because at the time, like this work that's hanging was done in 1974, and I was 22 years old and I didn't have any money. I couldn't afford any model, so I usually end up using myself as a model. And if you notice also, it's a sequential kind of work. And this was actually titled Autoretrato 2. And at the time, some of the influences that Pramuan also mentioned was also influenced me a lot. People like Lucas Samaras, uh, Michael Snow, and definitely Dwayne Michaels, who actually gave me an opening. Because prior to doing photography, I was already doing photography, but I was more into films. I was doing experimental films. And reading a lot, of course. And what happened was my idea of photography, the images I wanted to shoot or to be able to capture were not, couldn't be limited to one image. I had to do something that's always idea based and driven. So uh, my first set of series, this is actually a series of three, they were actually dealt with uh, not really a theme, but dealt with like self-destruction, but in a photographic way. And you notice that the sequential, they're like comic strips, like photo books. So it's a sequence of images that would end up with a conclusion. And with the kind of work I did was I wanted to break the concept of, like in cinema, the concept of the fourth wall, where you actually talk to the audience directly, people within here. Photography has been a two-dimensional uh, medium. When I said that no, probably we could experiment, explore something beyond the frame. So briefly, this is Autorretrato number 2. This is one. This, if you notice, definitely you'll notice, if you look at me, too old. That's me now here. The main reason was I lost the negatives and I lost the print of this particular series. So from my mind, I recreated this. And the idea was really, again, the concept of well, not well self-destruction, if you have to use the word, but I used another concept where I would be tearing, so I would tear pieces of my face and my body to be able to break through the the uh, two-dimensionality of the medium. And in actuality, if this is rendered and framed, you would have the strips that would, for example, on frame number 4 here at the lower, that particular strip that was taken out of that will be at the base of the photograph. So it has actually escaped out of the frame. It's there. And so same with frame number 5 and frame number 6. So you will have an, a breaking out of that particular uh, uh, dimension. In the same way that you've seen here, the number 2, I use a knife, I cut myself, and from the cut, photographic cut, blood, well, before I did use my own blood.
Yeah, yeah, he
But
wasn't allowed to use his own blood.
I wanted to use my
Our
own blood on
conversation.
this one, but was it toxic?
No, no, biohazardous
Biohazard.
waste. Not
But
allowed in the gallery.
yeah, but the idea was actually to be able to let it flow out and then flow all the way down to the gallery walls. So again, the concept of breaking that wall. And I was exploring all of that. And after a while, I did another series where I started writing on. Okay, sorry. I started writing. Sorry, let me go back. I started writing on the edges of the photograph. So I'd write stuff, and one particular thing that would be the culmination of my sequential work was based on a short story by Jorge Luis Borges called The Labyrinth, and it explored the concept of infinity, the fact that a dream is a dream is a dream. So which harps back to an old work of Dwayne Michaels before, where he used that like the misconception or the concept of images. You are only aware of what the image is within the boundaries of the frame. Once you take it out there, then you start to realize that there's something, a bigger dimension after that, and a bigger dimension after that. So it became something like that. In a very quick description of it was actually me, an empty room, me appearing, by again, photographically, analog, multiple exposure, materializing, and I'm there. And then the camera pulls out, it becomes me in a frame, and then it pulls out, it's a book, and then it pulls out, the book is actually me, and then that kind of uh, movement where it goes beyond and beyond and beyond. And I was writing that. Each and every frame, I would toss the etching, and I would write it down what forces were involved when I was in the act of shooting it. So that was essentially what it came to. And then after this, I went, I, I discovered, oh, so sorry. I discovered the photo me booth. All right, it's something that we go to when we need quick ID pictures, right? Go to a booth and then you drop coin and you pause, and then a strip of photo paper comes out with your images. What I said that it's a fixed format photographic process. I said I can actually do something with it. So with this, I started exploring with it. I started saying, like with this one, I started using mirrors where I could actually change the perspective of my face so that it doesn't necessarily become just a photo of me or of ID photo. It became more, and I started using mirrors. I used mirrors inside, and then I used mirrors so that I would reflect the view outside of the photo booth. And then I put another mirror outside the photo booth so that the photo booth can actually photograph itself. So the title became Photo Me, Photo You. So it was and then I also explored the idea of, because I could, the operator of that particular booth was quite, kind enough to let me sort of play around with it. I covered the light source of a photo booth. When you go into a photo booth, there's a flash light. Then it warns you, there's a warning light, and then it flashes again. So I covered it, so it was a total black, and I brought flashlights. So I'd use flashlights, and then I'd use different lights to be able to get sections of my face. So I did a bit of the exploration. That, in fact, no, we can discuss this later. Remember, I'm thinking of doing a redux on this particular series. I'm fascinated by it. And then this one. This is essentially like the end of this. You notice that the work is still sequential, but it's more incidental. Now, it's titled Bad Dreams, actually. Number 1, number 2, number 3. I had a series of 4. And it all became mixed media. I started discovering using found objects, found paper, and integrating it, and using text. At the time, I was also very much not influenced, but I was aware of the work of Ed Ruscha, an LA painter, and he was using words, and then I got involved with that. And this is the work that I did. And then I was using colored, I was using a lot of pentel pens, I was using a lot of crayons. So that was part of it. So after that, there was a big hiatus. This is actually in 1978. If you notice, this was an early work, but 81, this was redone 81, but I actually did this also in the 70s. So the first time I went to Europe, I went to Paris, and I said, when I go to a place like Paris, of course, what comes to your mind is Henri Cartier-Bresson, decisive moment, single images. So I said, I'm here, I might as well try it. So I did. So the first thing I noticed, also another thing, when I was there, I forgot to bring my white glass. I was stuck with my sunglasses. So the whole time I was there, I just had my sunglasses also. Everything looked dark to me. So in that sense, because I had enough photographic knowledge, I said, I'll do, they call it La Nuit Americaine, where you actually shoot like day for night. So that was the series that was born out of this. So this is the first image. And then this was a sign of the metro in Jardin des Tuileries. And then here was an interior of the metro. So I was just trying to do a Cartier-Bresson kind of thing, but I don't know, failed. And here's another one. But the prints, the images are actually much darker than that. I really am I'm a dark photographer. So, and this. So really, again, I really imbibed that. And in fact, up to now, whenever I go to I go out of the country, visit places, I do take black and white pictures on the side because, of course, it's a matter of skill and also a visual thing. Uh, I I force myself to take black and white pictures outside of my Instagram because I do a lot of Instagram work. Right now it's the phone is king right now, and that's for me. Instantly, I get, it's an expression. I get to be able to exercise my visual skill, if you have to call it that. So this was that series. So that was 1978, and then there was a big break because, like I said, Charmaine said, I started, or I was working in advertising. So, that is a very demanding mistress. So, and of course, the money's good. I couldn't really survive on my art. So I had to work. So the next image is this. This was in 2006. I couldn't, I tried producing images or work prior to this, but I couldn't, I felt that it wasn't worth the kind of work that I would usually be confident enough to show. And this was what the closest thing. And these are actually series as a torso. It's more, how do you say, not autobiographical, of course, as always, but close enough. So I worked with this. I started using Photoshop. This is still analog based. It's a negative. I shot it with a square format camera, Hasselblad. I would shoot things like that, and then I would transcribe it. I'll have it digitally scanned, and I worked with it on Photoshop. So it's a mix. I mixed with the texturing and also scratching. I used a stylus pad, and I was actually reworking that. So this was actually a series, Torso 1, Torso 2. And then I said I could explain, wait, let's get here. I said I'll do multiple images this time. So I started to do more, introduce more different elements. Like you have pictures that, again, it's also torso, but I started introducing other elements into it, which I could have done realistically by using collage, by using my collage. But I felt that it was also a good introduction. So I explored this. I explored this. And then I started physically tearing the photographs. So my photographs, and also because I felt that people will say, is photography art? Because it's a mass-produced kind of medium. I mean, if I take a picture, I can do 1,000 times of that, and nobody would know the difference, right? Not unless you tell them what the edition is. And I said, it has to be like Pramuan was saying, it has to be a monoprint. Whatever you do, you assemble, it's a mono. It cannot be replicated. And I found that, I said that, well, if I start tearing them, and the way I tear it, it will always be a monoprint, whatever it is. It might be the same image that you'll see, but then it would be done differently. And so I moved from there, and I explored it some more, and this was the series as I started doing it. So I would tear my pictures. In fact, my printer would get mad at me because they'll really do a good job of printing it, really using really good paper. If you notice, it's on rag paper and archival, and then I just end up tearing it. I said, what are you doing? You're just destroying the work. But I said, that's me, So it gives it one of the things that also moved me was the fact that before, when you walk in the street, especially in my country during election time, you get all of these billboards and posters, political, and people keep tearing them. And that in that manner, it also gives you a date line, because it can tell you which was the earliest ones and which was the later ones. By the way, it's torn. So that was also something that I explored. So this is my series, and then this is what I moved on. After tearing, I said, what can I do? It has to be more three-dimensional. So I started exploring folding and bending and crumpling my work. So that's essentially my work since 2, 3 years ago. So I've been exploring that kind of process. And recently, since essentially I'm a filmmaker, I said that I will go combine my work, the way I do film, I work in films, to be able to also use it uh, as a medium in expressing myself, not just in photography, but a little bit more than that. So this is the last image will be a video image of what I'm doing now. The base image is actually a clip from a short film I did. And what I've done is I wanted to use it just as material. The, the idea for me was I will, every time you photograph, even a moving image or a still image, you will have a generation loss. So progressively the image degrades and disintegrates. While in this particular instance, I photographed it against a monitor so that me as the observer is always there. So I introduced that concept of like another dimensionality where my presence is already there outside of, again, the concept of photography as a two-dimensional image. So I've introduced another element in that. And that's the area that I want to do. I used to dabble in structural film, and I'd like to be able to, again, revisit it and push it some more, do some more stuff on that particular direction. Yes.
That's a good point for me to ask you something. So I think when I look at the early work, which is very sequential, it's very clear this thinking you're having between film and photography, right? And you've obviously have had a very successful kind of career in moving image. So and then now you've done this new work. So I guess can you elaborate on what you see as that connection between your still and moving image practice?
Well, before there's always been separate. My movie making images is nowhere wasn't really art based. I mean, my art base has always been stills. Film for me was actually as work was more of work. The work I produced was actually as a cinematographer and also as a director. So it was always separate. Though that particular clip was actually a short film that I did that has an undertone of being independent, not commercial. And this particular direction is something that I wanted to explore. In fact, I wanted to break out again. Always the concept of forcing the medium. I wanted to break out by using video now. In fact, this is part of an installation. It's actually part of a. I had a show. I was part of a show called Underbelly, and the concept of that was it was held in a house, old house, and I wanted to say that what if these walls could talk? The first thing that came back, what if these walls could talk, right? What will they say? And I said, what if you break through that and create like a portal in the wall? So the physical presence or a device that I used was uh, a picture, a window frame with jalousies. And that's three-dimensional, like sculptural. And after that, I put a photograph and then collage. I had stones and leaves and stuff. But like you go through it, and then there was cutout, and I had a video monitor behind. So it was like you're seeing something, beyond. So I wanted to explore that. So I've been working on that. In fact, right now, what I want to do is actually I want to work with images that are projected on water, something that's very kinetic, and that kind of expert. I just wanted to push. I mean, images, making images, it's gone beyond our traditional concept of photography. Photography is, how would you say, Pramuan, it's just like, it's just a means of expression, right? It's the only thing that happened was you're using a camera to be able to express your art, right? Or create your images. So Essentially, that's what we're trying to do. I'm sure Pramuan has other things to, because he just told me earlier that he's been working on things without the sole purpose of exhibiting, but just for himself. So that's a
Oh,
good
my,
direction.
can you say a bit about that? I didn't know that. What are you working on now that that you're making but not necessarily showing?
No, I'm just maybe a bit lucky because I don't have to worry about getting out there and make
Hustling.
myself known. Probably don't care anymore. So I'm just exploring to push myself further, whether how far can I push myself to create some work that maybe more or less meaningful or have something to to leave it behind so
It,
people can read it or
is it still photography that you're working on?
yeah, still trying to go into moving image, but might take a while, a
Okay.
bit slow.
Talk to now. And I guess one other thing that caught my attention now. So you've been revisiting a lot of work. So not only did you remake the one with you
Yes.
tearing,
Yeah.
but you were asking me about the photo booths in
Yes.
Singapore.
Yeah. Especially I remember much earlier I showed you samples of the work I started. That was like around 76, and that's a good 40 years. I mean, in fact, it's going back now. No, it has evolved, right? It's the photo booth now has been relegated to uh, kids arcades where they can actually have their selfies and all. So for me, I want to also bring it to that concept of selfies. But this time around, I want to still use the old machine, but do something else with it because of technology. Like I was saying, you have digital projectors now. So I was thinking of doing a series where I can just have images patterns projected on me while having my photo of me done. So it's a trompe l'oeil, like I'm part of a wall, that kind of thing. Things that you can explore, and also like using smoke that I can actually generate and I can disappear. So I mean, it becomes more like a bag of tricks. I'd say, I hate to though sincere, I mean, deep in me, I mean, as sincere as I can be, I hope I am still making art. But people are saying, hey, it's a bag of tricks. You could have done this digitally, but here, so things like that. So, really playing around with modern tools that you can steal, but working with the same old 50-year-old apparatus that still generates images the old-fashioned way. So I think that's what I really want to do. That's why I've been asking around, asking Shahid. Apparently, they're bringing
It's
old-fashioned.
now very trendy to
That's why it's
have
very trendy.
the
Yeah.
photo booth again, but not the arcade ones. So I've seen the ones in Singapore where it's very retro looking. So you get these very retro photos, and a lot of people are putting in not $1 but many dollars to
This
take
time,
these
oops. So
photos
it's getting
now.
expensive. Oh, it's going to be difficult, but okay. I can afford it now. Before, no. I had a budget whenever I'd go do my photo booth work.
So, I just one last question before I open it up to the floor because I'm just curious. So, both of you were making very, I guess, for the experimental work in the 70s, but did you ever come across each other's work in the 70s and 80s?
Nope.
No.
No,
So, the
no.
first time you saw Pramuan's work was in that article that you read a few years ago, right now?
Yes, and I saw his book in Chiang Mai, and I bought his book. In fact, that's the biggest thing, biggest mistake ever. I forgot the book.
And
I
you
wanted to
wanted to
come up
bring
to
it.
someone and have him sign it, but you know, old age.
So, I mean, so you didn't know each other, but was it also that the kind of photography practice and the scene in Thailand and the Philippines, there wasn't that much kind of crossover?
Well, on my part, in the Philippines, we were actually just developing on our own. We became very insular in that sense. You know, photography. There was a growing. I mean, there were growing. I mean, experimental work was being, especially photography being used uh, in fine art schools. They begin using photography as a medium as a tool for making art. So, but we never really got to influence or to hear about work within Southeast Asia. It's mostly, again, it's the fault of our being colonialized. So it's all American influences. Like with me, seriously, I mean, the same influence that what Pramuan was saying, Lucas Amaras, John Baldassari, Michael Snow, definitely Dwayne Michaels, so that was the influence that we got. But Southeast Asian work, no, not that I know of.
Pramuan, what about you over in Thailand? What was the key kind of influence coming into Thailand at that time?
Not
Only American?
only American, yeah, because we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have other things. So most of the publication that I saw, mostly American. But there's some show that came in, it was German.
What about Japanese?
Not,
Because there were
didn't
books
get
and
to see any Japanese except books that I bought myself. It's pretty hard, yeah.
Yeah, same with me. But of course, I was very much aware of Japanese photography. I mean, really interesting stuff. I mean, that was also a very strong influence. I mean, they're very, very progressive when it comes to image making. So I was very much aware of that. I was very aware.
think
But
that-
again, through books, like what
Yeah.
Pramuan was saying.
We didn't have any exhibition from Japan coming to Bangkok at the time. Didn't see anything.
so what were the exhibitions in Bangkok at the time?
Just mostly of the work from Silpakorn University as well as from Goethe Institute, from British Council
I see.
and from Germany.
Okay.
That we saw the work that opened up our mind and make us work harder trying to get our own identity.
Okay. Sorry, I have one last question. Did the family of men ever travel to the Philippines or
Yes.
to the Philippines?
For me, yes. I saw it when I was like, I think 10 years old.
Oh,
Because my father was a photographer, by the way. So when I was growing up, I grew up to a subscription of Life magazine and German photo publications. And so I was very aware of what photography was about. Though, like I said, it's strange because the very moment I wanted to take pictures, it wasn't the same way that like my dad was. I didn't want to do pictorial photography. Of course, when I started taking pictures of flowers. That's how. But really, it was a different. I belong to a different generation. I'm sure Pramuan was also. We were, I would say, like the Woodstock generation. One of his prints there, you see his hair was long, and my hair was also very, very long, very long at the time. So that was the influence, that was the environment that we were in. But
all right. So we've got 10 to 15 minutes for questions. Does anyone in the audience have? There's a mic over there, so Jillian will run over to you if you've got something to ask. Oh, there's one question there.
Hello, this is for both photographers. Salamat for being here to you both. This is already in what was being talked about. I'm interested in influences from Southeast Asian photographers that have impacted on your work. So even if, as you say, it was primarily Western influenced, I'm interested to know do you have contemporaries that have been instrumental in the development of your work and craft as photographers, either within your country or in other Asian countries?
For me, no, I didn't have anybody because I didn't see any work made by Thai photographer or artist at that time that I know of. I saw work from the salon photographer, but that's not my type, so I didn't have anybody.
Yeah, so Pramuan was really, when I was doing my research, really beyond Pramuan, there was no one else that I could find from the 70s, other than salon, the clubs and the salons, where it was very popular in Thailand, actually.
Yeah, it's popular still now.
Still now.
well, same with me. At the time, again, I was so focused in because I was reading a lot, I mean, I guess it's crazy. I was reading like things like from Kafka, Hermann Hesse, so my mind was something else. So, and also at the time, there was a very, very uh, seminal person who encouraged me. His name was Ray Albano. He was the curator of the Cultural Center of the Philippines, and also Bobby Chabet. Where in fact I became part of his group, and these were a loose group of artists who were using dabbling in conceptual art and installation art. So it was more of that. That was strange because I was the only photographer in that group. So because the fact that I wasn't like a traditional photographer that would show, traditional images in the wall. Mine was a little bit more strange, if you have to use the word. So, well, I've never denied, I've never camouflaged the fact that I was a photographer. Every time, whatever work I do, whatever progressive, it's always photo-based. The foundation is always photography. It wasn't really not like you say, I'll start to paint, I'll do some paint work and stuff. No, it's always photographic based. Even with using things like risograph. I started using risograph because I found that they could actually have photo stencils. They can actually scan pictures and convert it into risograph negatives. And that's the reason I went into that, because it was also a negative-based thing. You know. So, and Xerox, of course. So it's there, Xerox. And again, for me, it was like with Xerox, I was struck by the word Xerox is never original. So I said, that's me.
Okay, was there any other question? Oh yeah, Alex.
I just want to continue my questions regarding whether it. I think from your presentation, both of you, it is very clear that both of you were inspired by photography as an image making process. But at the same time, since the very beginning, both of you are acutely aware that this is not enough. Therefore, I interfere and ask, did you call yourself photographer since the beginning, or are you comfortable with that kind of identity as a photographer within the context that the dominant practice of photography in the region is not the thing that you two are doing?
Yeah, for me, yeah, I've always considered myself as a photographer. But the only thing is, I guess now I call myself a visual artist, right? Because I guess I use photography primarily as my medium, but I'm a visual artist, so that's really, but I've never, first and foremost, I am a photographer. In fact, even my occupation, I mean, I work in films, so it's really, camera-based. My image making is always camera-based.
What can I say? No, I love camera. When I was young, saw my brother using it, so I start using camera. But maybe I more or less trained from art school. So my work more use the photographic tools just as a tool to create work of art. But I make money sideline from being photographer to support myself. So it's halfway. So whatever they call me, it's okay.
Yeah, I think Alex's question is quite interesting because I guess we both of us know of probably younger generation artists who might purely make photography but want to be known not as a photographer, as though it's not cool anymore, but only as an artist, like even if you are photo based. So I guess in the 70s that would not have been so, like no one was really thinking about labels so much, or I mean, in Nap's case, like, did you then have the word conceptual in front of the word photographer?
No,
So that
no,
you're a
no,
conceptual
no.
photographer.
I will never call myself a conceptual. Why? Well, because it actually smacked of being elitist for me. I mean, conceptual. It's very pretentious. I mean, a good conceptual photographer doesn't have to say that he's a conceptual photographer or a conceptual artist. You know, people, they are artists. So essentially that's how I would say. I probably approach photography in a different way. If you have to pin a label to it, I approach photography in a different way. That was it.
Okay, any more questions? Maybe everyone's very like shy. Oh, this one. See?
I have a question about how, in a lot of the works that you have presented, both Nap and Pramuan, that there is like a lot of numberings. And so my question is, what was the thinking about, so, Pramuan, for instance, in looking at photographs, I didn't realize that there was actually a series of 1 to 5 in which you look at how the different layers like came together. So I wanted to ask the both of you in this, because the serial attitude was also quite prominent in this particular moment of the 70s, like what were you thinking through those numbers or those sequence? Maybe you can share a bit more in your respective practices.
Yeah, you have autobiographical series, many numbers.
It's easy to identify.
I agree 100%.
You lost count if you try to came up with names. It's not that easy, and that's the easiest way to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just cataloging.
Yes, that's also the most logical thing because also of the nature of the medium. Photography is like you can just keep on clicking and clicking, right? So sometimes it's not like painting. You just can say, "Hey, I'm gonna do 20 paintings in a day," right? Mass produce it. No, photography it lends itself to that kind of like a series kind of thing. And again, it's usually like as photographers, I don't know personally. When you take pictures, you don't take singular images, right? I mean, when you're something attracts you and you see something that you want to photograph, you don't normally just take one image and that's it. More often than not, you take several beyond one image. So that, or more or less, that was one of the things that I could also identify that the progression of what I've done. And again, as usual, like for me when I work, it's also idea based so that the execution follows that. There's a certain theme. If you have to use the word theme, that I follow, and that's it.
Okay, well, it's actually the end of our 1 hour. But and since no one has any questions, I just wanted to thank both our speakers for coming all the way from their respective countries. Thank you.